group training, small group training, kids with special needs, personal training for the last 7 years. One thing that I've grown to talk about and to try to grow is the post-rehabilitation. People who've gone through strokes, people who've had injuries, physical therapy. I've taken on more into that realm, the corrective exercise, postural awareness, that kind of stuff. And then continuing to grow and get awareness out there through the community, through 2XL, working closely with a few rehab centers in the area, and continuing to grow the brand through there.
All right, and with us today is my partners, Howard Pendros and Joe Atef. The three of us are all fairly successful powerlifters. We have a powerlifting team that trains out of 2XL. We're not necessarily going to go through powerlifting today, however. What we're going to do is go through some common strength training exercises, and we're going to get to those strength training exercises through what's called the functional movement screen. So it is essentially an assessment tool for us to look at how people move, look at structural balance issues, look at core strength, look at mobility, stability issues, and then we'll use that kind of as a starting point to then prescribe or assign strength training exercises. So without knowing anything about somebody, it doesn't make sense necessarily for me to throw a barbell on their back and have them do a back squat. Not necessarily. So the first assessment that we're going to do is going to be called an overhead squat. So I'm going to have Pat take the dowel rod here. So he's going to get into a shoulder width stance with his toes straight, and then he's going to put the bar on top of his head, and we're going to ensure that his elbows are at a 90-degree angle. From that point, he's going to press the bar up above his head, and I'm going to have him squat down for me as deep as he can while keeping his heels on the ground. And we'll have him do 3 times. There's a few things that we're looking for here. Okay? The first thing we look for is what kind of depth is he getting to? Are his hips getting close to or below his knees? Yeah, let's do it from the side as well. Good. So as I evaluate Pat, and it's early in the morning and nobody's warmed up, but that's pretty good depth there. The second thing we're going to look at is his torso positioning. So ideally, you can stay how you were there. Ideally, the bar is going to stay in a straight line above his ears and in line with his hips. So he is slightly forward from that position. Okay? So the corrective of that So the first correction we would make to see what is causing his torso to lean forward would be to have him elevate his heels on this wooden plank. Okay? If you can see, he stays much more upright with the heels elevated. That's going to raise the center of gravity. Let's do one more. It's going to raise the center of gravity slightly, make it a little bit easier for him to go down. It's going to take out some of that flexion of the ankle needed for a squat. Okay? The other thing we'd be looking at throughout that squat, other than the torso and the depth, is the positioning of the knees, hips, and ankles. So ideally, and Pat did this really well, his knees are going to stay in a straight line with his toes. And a common error that we will see is the knees caving in when somebody squats. Okay? Usually the knee is just a conduit between the hip and the ankle. So if we see someone's knee going in, it's usually going to come either up from the hip, or down from the hip, or up from the ankle. So those are the 2 areas we'd look at as a corrective for trying to fix those knees staying straight. Okay? So that would be our evaluation tool with Pat. From there, what we'll do is we'll show our progression of exercise that we would assign for the squat. So let's grab the box, Pat.
Oh, go ahead.
I don't want to ruin your video.
Make it look like there's 2.
So this box we have here has 3 different heights. So why don't you sit on that height, Pat? You're pretty tall. Especially somebody that had, some depth issues with his mobility, we probably start him in a box this height where his hips were slightly above his knees, and then train that movement pattern of sitting his hips back. So, first progression I'll have you do, Pat, will be an overhead squat. So he's going to get in the same position we were in the overhead squat test. He's going to keep the bar above his ears, and he's going to sit back to the box, and then he's going to drive up through his heels, keeping his torso as upright as possible. We're looking at those same positions that we did in the assessment. We're looking for this to stay upright. We're looking for his heels to stay on the ground, and we're looking for his knees to stay in a straight line with his toes. Okay? Pat's going to get a workout today. And we will have some audience participation as well, if anybody's willing. Okay, our next progression would be using a kettlebell. Okay, so maybe Pat has progressed. We'll change his box height up to be a little bit lower. Okay, so he's going to hold the kettlebell out in front of him, and then he's going to squat down in the same way, keeping the weight on his heels, sitting back to the box, and then driving straight up with his torso upright. So the nice thing about using a kettlebell as a first progression after the wooden bar, or essentially using your body weight, is this would provide a little bit of a counterbalance for when you're squatting back. Okay, but in that way, we're also able to add load to the legs. Okay? Maybe I'll do the third progression, Pat. Okay, so our last one would be just a regular back squat. Okay? So we won't even use a box, he's just gonna put the bar on his back. For a back squat, he might take a little bit wider stance than he would for the kettlebell squat. He might take his toes and point them out slightly so that we can allow the hips to go down through a better range of motion. And he's gonna sit his hips back, keep his heels down, and saturate. That's pretty good. Let's do one more at least. Okay, good, Pat. Thank you. Okay. So the key points we're looking at when we add that bar to his back is we want to avoid a forward torso motion to him. Okay, so we want to keep the chest up, we want to keep the body neutral. What he did a really nice job of was that he did not force his neck and his head up, which is a common correction if you see someone fall forward at their chest. What he did a nice job was keeping his spine essentially just neutral throughout. He didn't try to force back at the neck to keep his chest up or overly exaggeratedly extend his T-spine. Okay? So that would be the three progressions that we would use for a squat. We would assess with an overhead squat based on possible corrective exercises that are needed. If someone's knee came in, we might work on their ankle. We might work on their hip. If they didn't have enough mobility, we might include between exercises of squats specific type of mobility exercises to address what's preventing them from going down. Okay? All right, so I think now, if I could have an audience member come up here. All right, excellent. What's your name? Okay, Ashley here, who we're gonna have her do the overhead squat test, okay? Okay, so take the bar, Ashley, step a little bit forward from that wooden plank to start. So I want you to get your feet shoulder width apart, toes straight. Good, now start with the bar on top of your head, elbows at 90, hands just a touch wider. Okay, good, now extend the bar up above your head. And ideally, I want you to keep that bar above your ears, keep your feet flat, and squat down as low as you can. Okay, and we'll do 3. Okay, excellent. So now we're gonna have her step back and put your heels on that wooden plank. Let me say a couple things. You bring the bar down for a second. So the main corrective that we need to work on there is that the bar and her torso are coming forward when she's coming down, similar to what Pat did. So she's just not completely upright. So the first corrective, just say, okay, is it the ankles that is preventing her from staying upright? So let's try that again. And let's come down another 3 times. Okay, good. So that was definitely better. It wasn't perfect. We saw her torso stay upright, but what we did is we saw the bar and her shoulders come forward. So based on that, we saw that the torso positioning is probably related to her ankles. So we probably work on a little bit more mobility in her ankles. The second corrective that we could see from that was that because the bar is coming forward just from her shoulder, we probably need to do some shoulder mobility to bring the shoulders back into a better position. Okay, so let's have her maybe just try one variation here. All right, start by sitting on that box for me. Okay, let's separate your feet out just a little bit. And on this one, I want you to take your toes and point them out slightly. Yep, and then have your knees track with your feet. I may have you hold this kettlebell at your chest. I want you to think about tightening your core and then standing up through your heels as you stand up from the box. Yeah, let's just do like 3 of them. Don't worry, I won't move the box on you. Okay, good. All right, thank you, Ashley. So that would be a progression that we'd use for a new client or a new member in our gym. Okay, we saw in the overhead squat some things we need to work on. In addition to using a kettlebell on the box, the next step we would look at is, okay, what other issues did we see? We saw that tight in the shoulders, we saw maybe some ankle issues. As we went on the box, we saw maybe just a little bit of her knees coming in, so maybe we need to work on some glute activation to turn those hips out and keep the knees in line with the toes. Okay. All right, our next assessment we're going to do is going to be the hurdle step over. Give us just 1 second to set that up. Okay, so our next one is going to be a hurdle step over. Okay, so Pat's going to get behind this, and he's going to get his feet together, touching the wooden, and then touching one another. Okay, all right, it's an awkward position to get into. Okay, from there, what he's going to do, and if I was doing this as an actual test, I would measure the distance from his knee to the ground, and I'd set this red line at that. It might be a little low, but just for the sake of simplicity, we'll keep it there. And his goal is to step up and over that red line, ideally only tapping his heel to the ground and then coming back. Okay, we'll have him do it 3 times on the right and then 3 times on the left. Okay, pretty good. Let's see the left. A lot of the assessments will have the individual working both limbs, so we can look at, is there a difference between right and left? Quite often there is. You can see Pat's probably a little bit more balanced, stepping over with his right foot, balancing on his left foot, versus the opposite here, stepping with his left foot. Do one more for me. Stepping with his left foot, balancing on his right foot. Okay? So in both, not too bad. Take that down. In both, not too bad. We could see his leg coming out and his calf touching that red line, which means we probably have a little bit of tightness in the hip flexors as he's reaching out there, okay? So, what we'll go through now is a progression of 3 single leg exercises, okay? Okay, so maybe I should demonstrate something here. This one's pretty easy. I could even do while I'm holding the mic. So our first progression for some type of single leg exercise would be a step up with knee punch. Okay, could be a lower box if somebody doesn't quite have the strength level. This is about 12 inches, so I would have the individual focus on keeping their heel flat on that box, stepping up, taking their opposite knee, and punching it up to about a 90-degree angle at the top. We work both legs equally. We could load this via holding a medicine ball, via holding a kettlebell, or even holding a dumbbell at one or both sides. Okay? The next one we'll do with Pat is why don't we grab that kettlebell, Pat? And we'll do a split squat, which we'll come back to with our next assessment as well. So, ideally, Pat's going to get his feet split front to back. He's going to hold the kettlebell in his opposite hand. So if he's got his right foot forward, he's got the kettlebell in his left hand. From there, he's going to keep his torso as upright as possible, and then he's going to drop straight down. Sometimes this is called a lunge, although we're not actually lunging into this movement. He's just keeping his feet stable. Ideally, at this bottom position, we've got a 90-degree angle at both knees, and we've got the torso completely upright. Okay? All right, very good. That's good, Pat. So if we saw some imbalances in right versus left, as we did a little bit with Pat, we would focus on some of these single leg exercises to see if we could correct some of that imbalances between right and left side. We would still work both sides, but we would make sure that as someone's going down in an exercise like a split squat, that they're getting a little bit of mobility and a little bit of strength at the same time. This trail leg, hip flexor, and quad, if done correctly, should get a decent stretch at the bottom. And when we saw Pat do his hurdle step over, we saw, yeah, with that left foot coming in front, he might have had a little bit of tightness in that right hip flexor. That could be addressed through a split squat. All right, now let's make sure we got clear behind you, Pat. So the next one we'll do will be a reverse lunge. So he's gonna hold that kettlebell up at his chest. He's gonna keep his torso upright, and he's gonna step backwards into the movement. And we could do this non-alternating or alternating. Same positioning at the bottom. We want 90-degree angles at both knees. We want the torso completely upright. This adds some movement into it, so it's going to increase the amount of balance and stabilization. Yeah, that's good, Pat. But we're able to really focus on getting that stretch at that back hip flexor as we step back into that movement. Okay? So that would be a simple progression of single leg exercises that we would go through. Okay. So the last assessment that we're going to do is called an inline lunge. And ironically, it's going to look a lot like the split squat we just did. If I was coming up with the name of it, I probably would call it a split squat. So what Pat is going to do is he's going to put one foot at the 0 and he's going to put one foot at whatever that measurement is we took earlier. For the sake of today, we'll just have him maybe a little bit split more than that. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so in the starting position, both feet are flat, toes are straight, and he's going to take his opposite hand and he's going to put it behind his neck. This one behind your neck. Okay? Okay, and then the other hand's going to be behind the small of his back. And this will be important here, this positioning of his hands, when we go into the progression of exercise we'll go through next. Okay, from there he's going to try to drop down, just like we did in the split squat before. So go ahead and drop down, and this is a very awkward position. Of all the tests that we would do with somebody, this is usually the one that's the most difficult. We're having them stand on a wooden plank, we're having them balance, we're going to go through a range of motion. The main things that we're looking at here is for the toes to remain straight, and for this bar to maintain 3 points of contact. All right, that's good, Pat. That 3 points of contact between the head, between the shoulder blades, and the tailbone, okay? Now, with the last 3 progressions of exercises, our step up, our split squat, and our reverse lunge, we kind of already addressed the lower body aspects of this particular assessment. So, what we're going to focus on with what we saw there with Pat, or what we might see with somebody, his shoulder mobility is pretty good. But what we might see with somebody is some tightness in the shoulders, merely getting that bar behind their head, in front and behind. Additionally, in the positioning of their torso, specifically looking at their upper back. So you got the 3 parts of your spine, you've got your cervical spine, you've got your thoracic spine, you've got your lumbar spine. We don't want very much movement at all with our lumbar. We want a little bit of movement with our cervical, and we want to have good mobility in flexion, extension, and rotation with our thoracic spine, that middle of your back. So, what do all of us do when we came here? What all of us do, likely even me at work, we're sitting at a computer, we're driving, we all tend to be forward at our shoulders. Even sitting, our colleagues here sitting at our tables, we tend to be rolled forward at our shoulders and rounded in our thoracic spine. Okay? So, how would we address that in the context of strength training? Okay? Well, the first would be we probably would do some type of shoulder mobility warm-up prior to any type of upper body lifting. The second is that we're really going to focus on shoulder positioning when we do some of those classic strength training exercises. Okay? So the 3 exercises we'll go through in relation to upper body is we're going to do a bench, we're going to do, and 2 corrective exercises thereof. All right, if maybe I can get my colleague Joe Atef to come up here and wants to demonstrate a bench. All right, so classic bench press. Everybody in the gym is doing them on Monday afternoons at Export, at Lifetime. Okay? Bench is a good exercise, develops strength in the pecs, shoulders, and triceps. But how can we do it in a way that A, protects our shoulders, and B, puts us in the best position to create as much strength as possible? So Joe is an 800-pound bencher, so this weight should be easy for him. So the first thing he's going to do when he receives a handoff, he's going to take his shoulder blades, and he's going to squeeze them down in together into the bench. The next thing he's going to do when he brings it down to his torso, he's going to keep his elbows tighter to his body rather than flared away. Okay, let's do one more, Joe, and then I'll release you from your duty for the day. All right, excellent. Very good, Joe. So what we're really looking at is that shoulder positioning when somebody is benching. We're looking at the shoulder blades to be retracted, to be depressed, and we're looking at the elbows to come in tight to the body, not necessarily touching, but in at about a 45-degree angle from the body when somebody's benching. If I have my elbows out flared, and if I have my shoulders protracted throughout, that could put some stress on the shoulders, versus if I get in that good positioning of my shoulders, I'm not only going to be stronger in that position, but I'm also going to be in a better position to keep my shoulders safe when I bench. Now, probably the hardest aspect of teaching a new individual how to bench in that fashion is the shoulder blades. Again, what did we talk about before is that when we're on a computer, when we're sitting, when we're driving, we're protracted, our shoulders are rotated forward. So the first basic corrective exercise we do there, oh, we're all caught up. All right, so we'll have Pat take a simple, I've had clients tell me that this orange band for this exercise is the hardest thing sometimes in upper body workouts. So Pat's gonna take his arms out straight, and then he's just gonna keep his elbows straight and pull that apart, and at the back, he's gonna focus on squeezing his shoulder blades down and together. Yeah, go ahead and face the crowd. So he's gonna focus on squeezing the shoulder blades down and together. Let's do one more, so you can even see through. Right there, the shoulder blades are coming down and together. Okay, that's good. The most common error with that is that you'll see elevation. You'll see the shoulder blades come up. What do all of us do when we're stressed? Our shoulders come up. Especially male individuals have a lot of trouble sometimes getting their shoulder blades to come down into that position when they retract. Not only that, but even here, I'm adding in a shoulder horizontal abduction. So I'm letting my shoulder come out to the side when I do this pull apart, which is going to make it easier to retract my shoulder blades. If I keep my arms straight, like in a bench, that's going to make it even harder for someone to do that. So we start with this exercise, then we have them lay on the bench, say, okay, let's not bench like you benched in high school, okay? Benching 3 plates bounced off your chest. Let's teach, okay, let's get the shoulder blades down, retract at the bottom, let's keep everything safe as we come down, okay? So the other aspect of it is we want to work not just the muscles in the front, but we want to work muscles that aren't facing the mirror, all this upper back musculature. Usually a tenet that we would teach our clients is that we want to pull or do upper back exercise at least as much, if not more, than we press. Tough for some of the power lifters. So I'm going to have Pat demonstrate for me a one-arm kettlebell row, since we already have a kettlebell here. So he's going to put one knee and one hand on the bench. He's going to ensure that his back is flat, and he's going to take this kettlebell, he's going to pull it back towards his hip slightly with his elbow up, and he's going to bring that down. As he brings that kettlebell up, he's going to focus on squeezing that shoulder blade down and together, just like worked on our pull-aparts. Okay, relax. And ideally we would do that on both sides of the body. We would do both sides. The advantage of doing something with dumbbells as opposed to, say, a machine is that you've got to work on that stabilization. We're able to work each arm independently most of the time. And let's use an example. Let's do one more quick assessment, Pat. Face the fountain for me. Make a thumbless fist, arms wide like a T. Okay, and then reach your right arm over your head, left arm behind. Okay, so I see the distance there, which is pretty good. Now let's see the other side. Okay, definitively more distance between, which is typical. When somebody's right-handed, most of the time, going into internal rotation is going to be tighter. So we can see just from that real simple test, we've got some imbalances between the shoulders, very typical. That's why doing single arm exercises is going to be important. We're probably not going to be able to affect everything we do in our everyday life, always using our dominant arm more so than our non-dominant arm. What we can do is try to mitigate that damage by making sure we include mobility work, by making sure that we do corrective exercises like our band pull-aparts, and by making sure we do upper back exercises like that on the bench. Okay, all right. Let's, Ashley, if you wouldn't mind coming up again, we'll have you try bench press. We'll do one more variation of an exercise, and we'll finish it up and allow Orange Theory to get up here and set up, or whoever's next. I want to take the bar up, plate off the bars. All right, so we'll use an example here. Ashley, again, we'll have her lay on the bench. We'll have her set up. And we're gonna have, even though she's listening to me, we'll just have Pat give her the bar and we'll give her no instruction this first time. Okay, we'll just bring the bar down to your chest and bring it up just like you would otherwise. Do like 3 for me. We won't through a whole workout, actually. Okay, good, excellent. Okay, come on up. So, she would be fair, on her first rep especially, you could see the elbows are coming out. She was maybe listening to me a little bit because then her elbows came in a little bit more. On the subsequent 2 reps, if you grab that band, Pat, and hand that to her. I want you to stand for us. So, hold that with both elbows straight, a little bit wider grip. There you go. Now from there, focus on keeping both shoulders down and then pull that apart and squeeze your shoulder blades together. Yep, good. Let's do like 4. Yep, you're focusing on squeezing my fingers with your shoulder blades. Uh-oh, Pat sees the right shoulder coming up. She's probably right-handed. Let's do 1 more. Okay, good, relax. So remember when she came up before, we saw that she had a little bit of tightness in the shoulders. We saw that just a little bit rolled forward, very typical. I'm not trying to pick on you, Ashley. Okay, so let's have you lay down again. And this time I want you to focus on, after Pat gives you the bar, before bending your elbows, I want you to pull your shoulder blades down and together and pin them into the bench and maintain that positioning as you go down. Okay, so take it out so it's right above your chest. Now, squeeze your shoulder blades down together. Feel that? A little more, a little more, a little more, a little more. Good. Now, try to hold that positioning and then bring it straight down to your chest and right up. Excellent. Much better. The only thing we'd work on is squeeze that bar hard in your hands. Don't let your wrist flex back as much. And do 1 more for me. Perfect. All right. Relax. Thanks for indulging us twice, Ashley. So you could see the difference between the first time she did it with her elbows flared, with her shoulder blades out, versus the second time after a little bit of cueing, a little bit of activation of those rhomboids, those rear delts, those muscles in the upper back, and with some coaching, she was able to get into a much better positioning to bring that bar down to her chest. That's not only going to be safer for her shoulders, but that also will be a stronger position if that's something you're concerned with on how much you're benching. That positioning of the shoulders down and in and elbows in is going to be a better position to press more weight than it would be with your elbows flared and shoulder blades out. Okay? I think, Pat, anything to add?
So as we were going through all that, like Eric was saying, the most important thing is positioning, making sure your body is going through that safe range of motion. I like to tell people it's not just what you do, it's why you do it. Make sure you have the why. Why are we doing the bench press? It's to get stronger, but stronger in the chest, not stronger in the lats, stronger in the torso. We want to make sure that we're isolating, we're focusing on the muscles that need to be moving, the muscles that are stabilizing. It's all about the why. Make sure you're asking that question before you're getting into the position and getting into your bench.
Okay, I'll finish with a little bit, one more explanation of what we did, what we do at 2XL in case you're just walking by. We're 2XL Strength and Fitness. We've got a 10,000 square foot facility on the mall property. It is over in the shops at Yorktown, which is across the parking lot. Same strip mall as Frankie's Deli, as Carson's Furniture Store. Any females that are interested in strength training, we have a seminar that we're going to be running on Saturday, October 21st at our facility. We've got some information right at our table over there. We don't solely work with females, of course. If you're a male, teenager, even if you know somebody who's going through some type of very restrictive physical therapy, children with special needs, we've got a program to work on building strength for them. So that's kind of our specialty, is working on, be it a child with autism, be it somebody who is post-stroke, or be it a powerlifter who's trying to compete in competition. And thank you, everybody.